The Icons of Real Estate podcast. Are you ready to learn the proven money-making secrets from top-producing icon agents? Ready to skyrocket your business? This podcast is for you. Tune in every week with your host, Tomasz Fonseca, and find out how to implement proven strategies to 10 times your business. From $3 million to $30 million in just 12 months. Brought to you by the Masters in Real Estate Marketing, Arter SEO.
Welcome to another episode of the Icons of Real Estate podcast, where we highlight top professionals who are making waves in the industry. I'm your host, Karen Roberts, and today I'm very excited to have Terri Schauer. She is a single mum. She's a former athlete, PhD holder who has spent over half her life managing rental properties. Her absolute passion is, it's allowed her to finance her education, pursue her athletic dreams, demonstrating how being a professional landlord can offer security and financial stability. So join us as we explore her inspiring journey and insights into the real estate world. So welcome to the show, Terri.
Thank you so much, Karen. That's a heck of an intro. I'm going to have to try to live up to that.
Well, I think the listeners are going to be interested in a little bit of that story. So that's where we'll start. What inspired you to pursue a career in real estate and particularly property management alongside, that's a very diverse background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the quintessential accidental landlord. And I live in Montreal, Canada. That's where I grew up. And when I went to school in Toronto, which is like 600 kilometers away from Montreal, there was no space left in student residence because I signed up kind of late. I was actually a transfer student. And I ended up living in this like weird like co-op house with 15 other students. And the day I moved in, they voted me house manager. And so I did that for a couple of years with no real carrots and sticks that had any meaning, right? Because I was just basically a peer trying to keep my peers in line to clean up, take out the trash, buy the toilet paper, like all that, sexy stuff. And then after doing that for a few years, I discovered that I was actually kind of good at it. And then I went to study. I did my PhD in Vancouver. And so then when I moved there, I was like, I like this setup. I'm going to just rent a house. And so I was actually house hacking before it was a thing. And there was financial benefits to that, obviously, because I rented a big house and portioned out the rooms and then lowered my rent and got to have a better quality of life because we had a nice terrace and a yard. And it was pretty cost effective, but it was also nice at that stage to be surrounded by other students. And there was this kind of community aspect. And I had the fun that it was me creating that. And then when I finished studying, I came back to Montreal and I went to see Dad. And I said, I've been doing this for, 5 years now. Can you co-sign a mortgage for me and let's go buy a building? And, Dad was like, yeah, smash toilets. And the area I picked was really not a great area of the city at that time. And Canada's not the States. We don't have gun crime. And it's also, I'm assuming by your accent that you're in the UK. I've actually lived in the UK for a year. And it's also not the UK in that we don't have the same level of aggression. It is actually true, the stereotype that Canadians are polite. And so you can buy a property in the worst part of town and I can walk in there and deal with the tenants. So there's not a physical danger aspect. It's just, sometimes it's a bit heartbreaking or difficult to see what's going on there, but it's not actually dangerous. And so then I made that work and scaled it to having a couple of residential properties and then got tapped out of borrowing capacity, which is, I think, for small time landlords, a pretty common thing is that, the bank won't lend you money because I was a student. And even if you do have 100K salary, eventually those debt ratios won't work anymore. And so to get around that growth problem, I knew I was really good at managing properties. So I opened a property management company and then did that for basically 10 years out of my basement. My property management company was actually called My Room Management.
Love that.
But the downside was this fact of trying to do it on my own meant that I cut
Mhm.
myself off from the network and the peer group and the information that would have allowed me to scale.
Right.
And that's then what happened when I, sort of metaphorically got out of the basement. I actually was approached by a coaching organization here to start coaching property management. And like, I only owned very few doors myself, but because I had this management experience, they wanted me to come and teach their investors. And then all of a sudden, I'm around these investors who are doing partnerships, raising capital, doing all that kind of stuff. And then, all of a sudden, the world opened up to me, and I was able to scale as an investor. So that's the
Wow.
long-winded explanation.
Wow. Well, you're obviously absolutely where you were meant to be to do that right from the get-go, from day one. That's pretty impressive. So how has your experience as being a single mum influenced your approach to property management and real estate investing?
Well, does it really influence? I mean, I don't know how much it informs like my job, because like I feel like, I had been managing, like I've been doing what I've been doing I had been doing it by 10 years, for 10 years by the time I got pregnant, and then I was in a relationship. It didn't go the way I wanted it to be, and so we separated. But I would say that it's more a question of the balancing act. And I really credit the fact that real estate has always kind of been a way that I support myself and a way that I manage my overhead. And so even before I was a single mom, like it helped me have an athletic career. And, I competed in first in kickboxing and then Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like at the world level. And that's 3
Brilliant.
hours in the gym every day, you know? And so like if you wanna do that, like it's difficult to have a really full-time job, and it's difficult to have that financial pressure over your head. And the fact of first house hacking, and then having that sort of community where like I was living in one of the properties, and I had a roommate, and so like I just reduced my overhead so much that like I really didn't feel that financial insecurity, that I think a lot of athletes feel, a lot of people starting businesses feel. And then when I like life handed me the cards to become a single mom, like that stress was not on me, not the time stress and not the financial stress. So
Wow. I mean, as a single mum myself, I know the difficulty. My girls are a lot older now, but I think that's a massive inspiration to others out there who may get stuck, or they feel they're stuck, and they fear going into something like that, but it's all doable. It's all doable. So can you share some of I don't know, the biggest kind of challenges that you've faced as a professional landlord, and maybe a little bit about how you overcame them?
yeah, well, I mean, I think that so let's start right at the beginning. And I think you mentioned this like fear, right? And I think it's very, very normal. And like now I coach investors. I like founded a coaching business with a partner, and like everybody has fear. And there's fear the first time you buy something. There's fear when you buy a bigger property with more zeros and more tenants and more challenges. There's fear when you start that development and you don't know how you're going to raise the capital. Like every time you take a growth step, there's that aspect of fear. And so, for sure, like I was lucky enough that I had parental support with closing on my first property, but like, I made a commitment to myself that I'm never going to go ask for money, because like my parents weren't 100% behind it. And I was like, I'm taking this risk. And if someone's not paying rent, like I'm going to make it work. And so like I put myself into that situation, and like I had poor sleep for a year after that happened. I had a tenant leave, and I didn't have the salary as a student to cover the mortgage. So like then I had to hustle to make sure that money was coming in. And I think part of it is to just have faith that you're going to make it work. And I think that like
Mm,
that leap of faith, no matter what challenge you're facing, there's an aspect of it, because every time you do something that you don't know how you're going to do it, you have to take that leap and trust that when you're in that situation, you will figure it out. Now, that doesn't mean do stupid things and take stupid risks. You got to like surround yourself with people who can help you mitigate that. But like you will never mitigate away the fear. Like you need to be able to confront that. So I think,
mm,
that's like the first kind of go, no go. I think that was a severe challenge. And then The next one was really scaling. And, after I kind of got over the fear hurdle, the other thing that I did, which like, please learn from, learn from my example and don't go through it yourself, was just this fact of doing it alone. And already listener, like if you're here listening to Karen, you're already taking that step to not try to do this totally alone. So, you're listening to podcasts, educating yourself is important, but that like network and that peer group is so crucial to growth because you will plateau. And, I don't care if you're going to be Warren Buffett one day, but like Warren Buffett plateaued, like people plateau. And the way you get through those plateaus is you get comfortable with the fear it takes to make the next step. And you surround yourself with people who are going to make sure that you're not making mistakes. And that's really like that kind of, rinse and repeat cycle that I learned. So like that scaling thing. And then now, to be very transparent, like starting a coaching business has also been a challenge because I know how to rent units. Like I know my market like the back of my hand. I can answer real estate questions in my sleep, but like I don't understand the real estate coaching business in the same way that I do management. So like learning that and then, building out a team, understanding also that aspect of scaling where you're now managing human resources and you want to offer your service at scale, and then not have the quality of that diminish and not have to jump in every time something goes wrong. So, that's kind of the latest set of challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like doing anything new, isn't it? It's always going to be, we always have a little bit of that imposter syndrome going on, but it's about being brave and just stepping into that knowingly. Awesome. So what about your fit? Let's share a little bit about your athletic background and what ways do you think or do you believe that that has actually contributed to your success in the real estate industry?
No, it's actually like very instrumental. And, so I wrote the book called The Mindful Landlord. And basically what that book is doing is talking about how to apply like really mindfulness, which comes out of like sort of a Buddhist tradition. And then some of the lessons that I learned in martial arts, apply that to the world of real estate investing. And so like, I always say that like real estate, what I did in real estate is kind of like a consequence of the other stuff that I've done. And the level of mindset and like solid ability to confront fear that you need when you're like in combat sports, like initially in kickboxing, like you're getting in the ring, you don't know if you're going to get knocked out. And so you have to be so internally aligned and able to perform under that stress that like I just built a very solid mindset with that. And then afterwards, like, everything else kind of seems easy because once you've tested yourself in that kind of fire. But I don't think you need to go through those experiences necessarily to apply that methodology. And I guess that's kind of what I was trying to do in Mindful Landlord is share some of those lessons because everybody can profit from being more mindful and like being more aligned in terms of, understanding how to manage your emotions and really like what are all these different aspects that are going on in our mind? Like
Mm.
your thoughts that are constantly chattering or like your fear or anger that are really just dashboard lights that are showing you pay attention to this, but you don't necessarily need to pull your car off the highway, right? So
Right. So I'm sure it's helped in lots of different ways. I mean, you've got the discipline, there's so many things. But yeah, mindset is everything, absolutely everything. So for the listeners, you know, what are things like for you right now? What kind of production have you been doing, say, for the last year?
by production you mean like what
So
what
you
what projects or
yeah. How many projects did you have on the go last year?
yeah. Well, so like we Canada actually like we've been in this like weird interest rate cycle, which like I'm sure, every part of the
Yeah,
like OECD is kind of affected by similar things. I know like the Bank of England has had some bounces around. The US just dropped 50 basis points. And so like
yeah.
in the Canadian market, we actually were the first OECD country to start dropping interest rates. And that's because our government really hiked in a very extreme way. And so the market for the last year and a half has been very quiet. So
Right.
like, my partners and everyone's been sort of sitting on their hands and trying to like weather that interest rate storm. And now we're all in refi phase. So,
Right.
as I'm
So it's all
watching
coming
the
back.
opportunity, exactly watching the opportunities start to come back. And, I use that time because right? It's like these things are cyclical. It's like when you go into winter, that spring will come. It's just a question of when. and which is the advantage of having that long time window horizon. Like being in the industry for 20 years is not the first downturn I've seen. But I used that time to really work on my back office, take a break with acquisitions, and just really like get my team solid, work on like setting up some standard operating procedures, and then really like working on I have a great team of like actually all ladies.
Love
And
that.
so yeah, who are in the phase of having like relatively young kids. We have one who hasn't had kids yet, but we all kind of have similar challenges, and so it's just really fun for me to be able to build some of those my team members up, help them progress in real estate, and know that like we kind of are on the same wavelength with what's going on for us.
Brilliant. And I suppose the coaching side as well. So now you're doing that as well. That's going to help your whole team as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely. And
Fantastic.
like, going from coach, from boss to coach, and I think the more you are able to like flip that switch in your head, like I've just seen a lot of like positive results in my business. So
Brilliant. So what's next for Terri? What are your goals for next year?
it's actually funny. One of the things that happened through the coaching is I really, hold my students' feet to the fire as far as goal setting, like by quarter, and like mapping out all of those things, creating accountability. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to like walk the walk now. So,
Yeah.
so I did that, and it then triggered this like big kind of refi phase where like I looked at some of my own properties, I looked at some of what my partners are doing, and some of the buildings that I just manage, and kind of like motivating everybody to like capitalize, because like right now in the Canadian market, we feel like there's going to be a 6-month window of opportunity. And so the sooner that we can, realize some of those gains that have happened in the last year and a half when everyone was sitting on their hands, means that we're going to be able to go into acquisition phase, and then to continue building the coaching business. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, at this stage of the podcast, we normally ask you if you had a podcast, what would you call it? Because we're not just a podcast, we are the number one real estate podcast network. And our passion is just making podcasting accessible for all people in the real estate business. But you already have one. So would you like to share with the listeners what that is called?
Absolutely. So, my podcast is called the Real Escape Investing Podcast. And, I really put a lot of thought into that name, because I think, when I obviously through coaching and networking and stuff, like I meet a lot of people. And one of the things that really resonates in terms of those challenges is that, like, yes, there's financial rewards to real estate investing, but the real jewel in the crown is freedom. And
Mm.
whether we're trying to escape, in feelings of insecurity, or whether we're trying to escape the constraints of a job, like time, financial, geography. Sometimes people are unhappy with, the fact that they're tied to a specific location because of a job. And the great thing about investing in real estate and, starting that path to financial freedom is the freedom. And that, I guess, is like, if there's one kind of takeaway from my story, is like the freedom to have this breathing room, to have an athletic career, to be in a single motherhood position where, like, obviously it's not easy all the time, because there's maybe some support that's lacking, but at the same time, like, if I have to take a day off work, like I can do it. And my revenues don't suffer. And so, whatever it is, like, it's just really nice to have that, security to fall back on. So.
Absolutely. And I don't think there's any other industry really where you can achieve that. So, well, what should the listeners do next if they want to get in touch? Where do they find you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm, you can find me on any social media platform. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, just with my name, Terri Schauer. And if you have interest in like applying some of this methodology, there's my book, The Mindful Landlord, which is available on Amazon. It's also available from Amazon UK, because I like check that little
I've
box.
seen it. I've seen
Yeah.
it.
And then I do actually on my website have a 30-day mindfulness challenge if people want to kind of, work on this themselves and get more familiar with those ideas. So you can just go to Terri Schauer /escape, and you will find that free 30-day mindfulness challenge there.
Brilliant. And I haven't heard of many people covering that side of it. And I think, yeah, that gets missed a lot. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your insights. Brilliant. Your story is amazing. And I think that's just an inspiration to many to just, get over your fear and keep going. So, to the listeners, I will be back next time with the Icons of Real Estate podcast. Bye for now.